The Exarchoth Empire's fleet hovered over Earth like an insurmountable shadow, a coalition of species united by a single cause: the annihilation of humanity. They believed Earth to be nothing more than a speck in the vastness of the galaxy, a world filled with weaklings who were unworthy of their attention. The invading fleet, stretched across the heavens, warships large enough to dwarf any human creation hung in orbit above the planet. Weapons poised for destruction. Humanity had no hope against such a force, or so the aliens thought. The first wave came fast and brutal. The skies above Earth darkened as massive ships pierced through the atmosphere. Their cannons fired devastating energy beams, scorching everything in their path across the oceans and cities, exploding in a single flash of light. Humanity stood defenseless, or so it seemed, as Earth's military scrambled to react, a desperate last-minute effort to salvage a dying world. But what the Exarchoth did not know was that humanity was not as defenseless as they believed. The moment the first blast hit the Earth's surface, an unexpected response came from the shadows. Small scattered ships emerged from hidden bases and underground bunkers. Vessels that should have been nothing more than specks against the enemy fleet instead tore through the skies with remarkable speed and precision. Their movements were erratic and unpredictable, a stark contrast to the orderly methods of the Exarchoth forces. At first, the aliens laughed off the surprise attack. Their sensors struggled to track the human ships as they darted around their much larger enemies. Humans deployed old-tech fighter jets mixed with modified alien drones. They engaged in hit-and-run tactics. No one expected them to use guerrilla warfare against the most powerful military force in the galaxy, but that was exactly what they did. The humans didn't fight like soldiers. They fought like survivors, not looking for glory, but for a way to stay alive. The Exarchoth were confused. Their superior tactics meant little when faced with enemies who refused to play by their rules. Their massive warships fired into the chaos, attempting to clear the skies, but their shots missed wide as human pilots wove through the air, dodging blasts and retaliating with shocking accuracy. The humans used every weapon they could find: old-fashioned explosives, missile systems, and even advanced EMPs that scrambled the systems of the alien ships, turning their firepower against them. It wasn't just the human military at work. Civilians across the globe took up arms against the invaders. What started as a disorganized resistance turned into an organized rebellion. Fueled by pure desperation, scientists, engineers, and mechanics worked in secret, crafting makeshift weapons capable of hacking alien technology. An army of volunteers armed with everything from homemade explosives to jury-rigged anti-aircraft guns fought alongside trained soldiers, creating a fighting force unlike any the aliens had ever seen. By the time the second wave arrived, the humans had already begun to mount a counteroffensive that Exarchoth had expected to sweep through Earth in days. Instead, they were faced with a series of calculated and brutal attacks that left their ranks in disarray. As the aliens attempted to regroup, their communications were hacked, their fleet's movements were disrupted. The warlords who had planned for this day, with centuries of preparation, suddenly found themselves in uncharted territory. The humans had not only survived the first wave, but had made the impossible happen. They had thrown the invaders off balance. Now the aliens were forced to consider a new reality. Humanity might not be as easy to crush as they had thought. The aliens regrouped in orbit above Earth, their immense fleet now facing the unexpected challenge of a race they had dismissed as insignificant. The Exarchoth commanders met intense silence within their command ships. The shock from the humans' counterattacks had not yet worn off. They had prepared for a swift conquest. Instead, they were now embroiled in a war that threatened to drag on longer than expected. The Exarchoth warlords were not accustomed to failure. Their empire had ruled for millennia, and they had seen no resistance they couldn't crush. They had expected Earth's defenses to fall without a fight, yet here they were, a coalition of species with centuries of advanced technology, being held at bay by a race they considered primitive and desperate. There were murmurs of disbelief and frustration throughout the alien ranks as they recalibrated their strategies, trying to understand how humanity had done the unthinkable. Meanwhile, on the surface of Earth, the tide was shifting. Humans were not just defending their planet, they were learning the enemy's weaknesses. They began to adapt faster than anyone could have imagined. Their scientists cracked the alien encryption codes and hacked into their communication networks, sending false orders to the enemy fleet. The aliens had no idea who to trust anymore. Their fleet commanders received conflicting orders, one moment to retreat, the next to advance. The confusion was palpable as human-made viruses infiltrated the alien ships, shutting down their navigation systems, turning their once invincible fleet into drifting hulks of metal. Their weapons failed to fire, their shields collapsed in on themselves. The aliens scrambled to fix their ships, but it was too late. Humanity's guerrilla warfare tactics were proving to be far more effective than anyone had imagined. The once unified alien force was now in disarray, and the humans seized the opportunity. The human military command saw their chance and struck hard. The first major victory came in the form of a surprise attack on a key HFY flagship that had been providing command and control for the entire fleet. The flagship had thought itself safe in high orbit away from Earth's surface, but humans had anticipated this arrogance. Their fighters launched a barrage of EMP missiles that disabled the alien ship's defensive systems. The humans then deployed a series of boarding pods that penetrated the alien hull and launched teams of soldiers deep into the heart of the flagship. Inside the alien ship, chaos erupted. The humans moved with brutal efficiency, their tactics ruthless and direct. They swept through the corridors, eliminating alien forces one by one. Their stealth technology allowed them to bypass even the most advanced alien sensors. Human soldiers were trained to survive at all costs, and that meant taking out high-value targets, disrupting the flow of the HFY command structure at every level. By the time the aliens realized what was happening, the humans had already disabled the flagship's ability to communicate with the rest of the fleet. The result was immediate panic among the HFY forces. Without their command ship, they were vulnerable, disorganized. The humans pressed the advantage, moving quickly across the battlefield, attacking with precision and speed. The alien invaders began to retreat, some attempting to escape into deep space, but the humans pursued relentlessly, cutting down their escape routes. For the first time since the invasion began, the HFY felt fear. They were no longer invincible, and the humans had proved it to them with every calculated strike, every surprise ambush. The aliens were learning what they had failed to consider. Humanity was not only capable of fighting back, they had the tenacity and intelligence to turn the tables on their enemies in ways no one had expected. The HFY fleet reeled from the human attack, their superiority, once taken for granted, now a distant memory. The war had taken an unexpected turn, and the aliens were no longer certain of their victory. Their vast numbers and overwhelming firepower were no longer the advantage they had counted on. The humans had shown them something far more dangerous than brute strength. They had shown them cunning. At the Human Command Center, a small group of military and scientific minds were gathered around a holographic table, analyzing the battle data. The previous days had given them a clearer picture of the HFY weaknesses. Humanity's experts had pored over alien technology and military tactics. Learning quickly from their encounters, they understood now that the HFY were predictable in their arrogance. Their over-reliance on sheer power had blinded them to the possibility that anyone could fight back like this. The human military command was prepared to strike again, but this time their goal was not just to hold back the invaders or take out a few ships. It was to cripple the entire HFY war effort. The new strategy was based on something they had learned during their covert attacks: humanity's ability to adapt to alien tech far faster than the HFY could anticipate. They had unlocked the key to infiltrating and sabotaging their fleets with precision. One of the first breakthroughs had been the hacking of the alien ships. During the initial engagement, their weapon systems were strong, but their communications networks were fragile. Humans had figured out a way to plant self-replicating viruses in the core systems of these ships, rendering them useless. As the humans pushed forward, they began systematically sabotaging the alien war machines, forcing the HFY to waste valuable time on repairs instead of mounting an effective counterattack. The next phase of humanity's counteroffensive began with a bold move. Earth's scientists unveiled an entirely new kind of weapon, one that had been in development for years, but had remained hidden until now, an electromagnetic pulse capable of disabling entire fleets of ships. The pulse was not a standard EMP, it was a concentrated burst that could target specific systems without destroying the ship itself. Humans called it the blackout strike, and it was their secret weapon. On the ground, human forces continued to push back the invaders with unrelenting force as the Exarchoth dug in, preparing for an assault to end the war once and for all. But the humans were ready. Every soldier, every scientist, every engineer had a part to play in the coming battle. As night fell over Earth, the final preparations were made. The blackout strike would be launched from the heart of the human fleet, a massive offensive designed to shut down the alien systems in one decisive blow. As the Exarchoth prepared for their final assault on Earth, their confidence began to waver. The reports from their field commanders were filled with confusion. Their communications were scrambled, their ships malfunctioning in ways they hadn't predicted. Every move they made was met with resistance, more than they had ever expected from this insignificant species. And as the blackout strike was initiated, the full scope of the mistake they had made became clear. In the span of a few moments, the core systems of the entire Exarchoth fleet went dark. Entire warships turned into floating debris. As their weapons and shields failed, the humans had crippled the heart of the Exarchoth war effort, and now they would show the galaxy what they were truly capable of. The Exarchoth fleet hung in space like a broken beast, its once formidable power now rendered useless. The alien commanders scrambled in panic, trying to regain control. But it was too late. The blackout strike had done its work, disabling the alien warships in a matter of seconds. Communication lines were down. Entire sectors of the fleet had gone dark. They were disoriented and vulnerable. For the first time since the beginning of the war, the Exarchoth were on the back foot, and the humans were ready to capitalize on it. On Earth, the human forces didn't waste any time. They had been waiting for this moment. The blackout strike had given them the opening they needed to strike at the heart of the enemy's remaining forces. Military commanders issued orders for a full-scale assault on that Exarchoth flagship, a massive vessel that had been serving as the focal point of their war effort. It was the command center from which all operations had been coordinated, and now it was exposed with its shields down and weapons offline. Humanity's elite forces prepared to board the ship and eliminate the remaining alien leadership. In the vastness of space, the human fleet moved in like a swarm of insects, their ships small but fast, darting around the massive Exarchoth flagship. As the flagship drifted in orbit, unable to defend itself, human boarding pods shot toward its hull. The pods pierced the alien ship with deadly precision, deploying squads of soldiers into the heart of the vessel. Once inside, the humans split into teams, each assigned to specific objectives: sabotage the ship's power core, eliminate key commanders, and destroy all remaining technology that could be used to fight back. The battle inside the flagship was brutal. The Exarchoth were not easily defeated. Even when their systems were offline, their soldiers fought with the rage of cornered beasts. They rushed to defend their ship in desperate waves, but the humans were relentless, using tactics that had become second nature to them. After weeks of constant warfare, the human soldiers moved swiftly, taking out alien forces one by one, clearing the corridors, and making their way toward the central command room, where the final push would occur. As they fought their way through the ship's hallways, the humans encountered resistance from the alien elite guard, towering warriors, genetically engineered for combat, each one a formidable opponent. But the humans were driven by the knowledge that this was the turning point, the chance to end the war once and for all. Their resolve was unwavering as they pressed forward, taking out alien after alien, until they reached the heart of the ship. Inside the command center, the remaining Exarchoth leadership prepared for their last stand. The ship's captain, a towering figure clad in black armor, stood at the control panel, barking orders to his remaining forces. But his time was running out. The human team, led by Captain Lena Ward, reached the command room with explosive force, overwhelming the remaining alien guards and confronting the captain in a brutal firefight. The alien captain fought with all his strength, but the humans had the advantage. They had already taken out most of his officers and disabled the ship's systems. Any hope of reinforcements was gone. The battle was lost, And in the final moments of the fight, the alien captain was captured alive. Humanity's strike had shattered the last of the Tarkov's command structure, and the war was on the brink of being won. The capture of the Tarkov captain was a pivotal moment in the war, but it was not the end. The victory over the flagship was only the beginning. As humans began to recover the captain's intelligence, a shocking truth emerged: the Tarkov Empire was far more fragmented than they had believed. Factions of the once united empire had long been divided along ideological lines, and now, with their leadership crippled, the fractures were coming to light. The captain was a loyalist to the emperor, but there were other factions within the Tarkov that saw the empire's endless war as a pointless path to destruction. One of these factions, the Sthera Alliance, had already begun making covert contact with human representatives, offering to help dismantle the remaining Tarkov military forces in exchange for protection and a share in the future peace process. The Sthera were a species of calculating diplomats and ruthless tacticians. Their war machines had been some of the first to be turned against the Emperor's forces during the chaos. After the blackout strike, their message was clear: they wanted a seat at the table when the Empire fell. Humanity was faced with an impossible choice: align with a faction of the very invaders who had sought to destroy them, or risk facing a more dangerous enemy in the future. After much deliberation, the human high command made the decision to send a delegation to meet with the Sthera. They needed more allies if they were to finish what they had started and ensure that the galaxy would not fall into the same chaos that had engulfed the Tarkov for centuries. As the human delegation made contact with the Sthera, the conversation was tense. The Sthera had their own agenda. They wanted a say in the future of the galaxy, but their cold calculations and manipulations left some of the human negotiators wary. But the humans had learned quickly from their previous encounters with the Tarkov. They knew how to read a situation, and they understood the stakes. If they could bring the Sthera into their fold, they would gain valuable insight into the fragmented Tarkov forces, and perhaps even prevent a future war among the factions. While the diplomats worked to hammer out an agreement on the political front, the human military was not idle. The remaining Tarkov forces were scattered across the galaxy, and they were not going to give up easily. They still controlled vast portions of space, and their remnants were capable of launching devastating counterattacks. If given the opportunity, humanity had to act fast to dismantle the last of the Empire's war infrastructure and prevent any resurgence of the alien threat. In a series of rapid military strikes, human forces took out key Tarkov strongholds, using their knowledge of the alien technology and systems to disable weapons facilities and communication hubs. The human fleet moved quickly, coordinating with the Sthera to take down the remnants of the Empire's defenses. Each strike was more precise than the last. The human tactics were becoming legendary, and the remaining Tarkov forces found themselves unable to keep up with the relentless advance. But as the final battle loomed, the human delegation learned that the Emperor himself had survived and was preparing to launch one last desperate bid to reclaim control of his empire. He had retreated into a hidden base deep in uncharted space, a place known only to the highest-ranking Tarkov officials. Now he planned to use his last remaining forces to wipe out humanity once and for all. The news of the Emperor's survival hit the human delegation like a thunderclap. The last remnants of the Tarkov Empire had gathered around their fallen leader, who was now hiding in the furthest reaches of uncharted space. Humanity's military high command could feel the pressure mounting. The final assault was near, and they had to prepare for a battle unlike anything they had faced before. The Emperor was not just a leader, he was a symbol of the Empire's strength, and his death would signal the end of their reign of terror. Intelligence gathered from the Sthera pointed to the Emperor's hidden base, a massive fortress surrounded by cloaking technology that made it nearly impossible to track the location. It was buried deep within a nebula in the farthest edge of the galaxy, where even the most advanced sensors would struggle to penetrate the clouds of cosmic dust and energy. But humans had learned the value of unpredictability, and they had developed a plan to reach the Emperor's stronghold before he could regroup and strike again. The human fleet began its final preparations for the most dangerous mission of the war. They would have to slip through enemy lines, undetected, a task that seemed impossible given the sheer power of the remaining Zarkov ships. Humanity's finest stealth technology would be put to the test. They modified their ships to be virtually invisible to enemy sensors, employing tactics they had used to infiltrate enemy vessels in the early days of the war. The human ships would move under the cloak of darkness and strike when the Emperor's forces least expected it. On the ground, Earth's leaders continued their negotiations with the Sithra. Even as the humans prepared for war, they knew that if they could win this final battle, they would be in a position to shape the future of the galaxy. But that was not guaranteed. The Sithra had their own motives, and some human leaders feared that an alliance with them would mean trading one empire for another. But the stakes were too high to back out now. The Sithra had valuable knowledge, and they could offer the human race the support they needed to deal with the remnants of the Zarkov Empire. As the final battle loomed, the human fleet launched its first phase of the operation, slipping past the enemy's outer defenses undetected using their advanced cloaking technology and small, nimble ships. The humans infiltrated the nebula and began their approach toward the Emperor's hidden base. It was a tense and quiet journey, the ship's crews holding their breath as they passed through the thick cosmic clouds, with every second feeling like an eternity. Their mission was simple: infiltrate, destroy the Emperor's base, and end the war. But the risk was enormous, and the unknowns were many. When the fleet reached the heart of the nebula, they discovered that the Emperor had anticipated the move and had laid traps in wait. They had only moments to react as the first of the enemy's warships dropped out of the darkness. A massive battle erupted with no warning. The silent calm of space was shattered by the sounds of weapons fire as the human fleet fought back with all its might, using every tactic and maneuver they had perfected over the last few weeks. The fight was brutal, fast, and relentless. In the midst of the chaos, the human elite squads deployed onto the Emperor's base. Through a series of daring boarding pods, they made their way inside the fortress, hoping to find the Emperor and end the war for good. But what they didn't know was that the Emperor had one final trump card hidden deep within his base, a secret weapon that could turn the tide of the battle in his favor. As the human forces stormed the Emperor's fortress, they encountered heavy resistance. The Zarkov elite warriors who had remained loyal to the Emperor fought with everything they had, their bodies enhanced by technology and their minds driven by fanaticism. They knew that if the Emperor fell, their empire would crumble, and so they fought with desperation. The humans had trained for months in anticipation of this final assault, but nothing could have prepared them for the sheer ferocity of the enemy they were facing. Inside the Emperor's fortress, the human squads fought tooth and nail for every inch of ground. Their weapons fired in rapid bursts as they pressed deeper into the heart of the stronghold. The alien architecture was cold and mechanical. Everything about the fortress screamed of oppression, the air thick with the metallic smell of machinery and the stench of 1,000 battles fought in its halls. The soldiers moved swiftly and silently, cutting through enemy defenses one by one. But they knew time was running out. They had to reach the Emperor before it was too late. Meanwhile, outside, the human fleet battled valiantly against the Emperor's remaining warships. The cloaking technology that had allowed the humans to approach undetected was now failing under the overwhelming pressure of the enemy's superior firepower. The sky lit up with bursts of energy as the two forces collided, the humans using everything they had learned from their previous skirmishes to stay one step ahead. The enemy ships were massive compared to their own, but the human ships were smaller and faster, maneuvering with agility that the Zarkov couldn't match. The human fleet had become an expert in hit-and-run tactics. They would strike hard, then vanish into the vastness of space before the enemy could retaliate. Back inside the fortress, the human squads encountered their greatest challenge, yet the Emperor had anticipated the assault and had prepared his final defense, a weapon unlike any the humans had encountered, a massive war machine that towered over them with mechanical limbs that moved like the arms of a giant. The machine was a last-ditch effort to protect the Emperor at all costs. It was a machine of pure destruction, designed to crush anything that stood in its way, and it was controlled directly by the Emperor himself. The human squad split into smaller teams as they attempted to disable the machine and clear a path to the Emperor's inner sanctum. The battle was chaotic as the machine swung its massive fists, smashing through walls and crushing everything in its path. The humans fought back with everything they had, but the machine was relentless. Every shot they fired seemed to have little effect on its armored exterior. The machine's laser cannons tore through the walls as if they were paper, and its sheer size made it nearly impossible to avoid its attacks. In the midst of the battle, Captain Lena Ward and her team pushed forward toward the heart of the stronghold. Knowing that they had only one chance to end the war, they reached the central chamber, where the Emperor awaited, seated on a throne of bone and metal, his face cold, and calculating the last remnants of his empire gathered around him. He had not expected this day to come so soon, but now that it was here, he would not go down without a fight. The Emperor's eyes locked onto Captain Ward's as he rose from his throne. His voice, cold and commanding, echoed through the chamber as he called for the final strike. The Emperor's voice thundered through the chamber, his presence overwhelming. As he rose from his throne, his eyes locked onto Captain Ward and the human soldiers standing firm before him, his hands outstretched as if ready to unleash some unimaginable weapon. But Captain Ward wasn't intimidated, not anymore. She had faced death countless times over the course of this war, and this moment was no different. Her team stood poised, ready to end it all and bring the Emperor's reign to an end once and for all. As the Emperor moved forward, the walls of the chamber seemed to close in around them, his every step shaking the ground beneath their feet. The human soldiers braced themselves, knowing that the battle would come down to this moment. They had no more reinforcements, no more tricks up their sleeves. It was them against the Emperor's final weapon, the war machine they had fought so hard to reach. The Emperor's eyes gleamed with malice as he spoke in his alien tongue, his words dripping with venom. He believed himself invincible, the leader of a galaxy-spanning empire. His voice echoed through the room as he taunted the humans, reminding them of their insignificance before his might. But Captain Ward had no intention of backing down, not now, not after everything they had fought for. She motioned to her team, and they moved into position, silently setting up explosives around the room and preparing to neutralize the war machine once and for all. The battle outside continued to rage on as the human fleet faced wave after wave of Tarkoth warships. The remaining alien forces were trying desperately to regroup, but they were losing ground fast. Humanity had them on the run. The Stray Alliance had sent reinforcements to help secure the skies above Earth, and the human forces pressed forward with relentless speed, pushing deeper into the heart of the enemy's defenses. Back inside the Emperor's fortress, the battle had reached a fever pitch. The war machine roared to life, once again, its massive limbs swinging wildly as it sought to crush the humans beneath its weight. But Captain Ward wasn't about to let it end like this. She barked orders to her team as they split up, trying to flank the machine, while others worked to disable its power core. They knew they had to act fast. Time was running out, and the Emperor was preparing to launch his final attack. The machine's claws raked through the air like deadly blades, tearing apart anything that got in its way. But the humans were quick. They darted in and out of cover, using their agility and small weapons to strike at the vulnerable points of the machine's armor, each shot weakening it bit by bit, until finally Captain Ward saw her opening. With a single command, she signaled for the final strike. One of her team members fired a grenade directly into the machine's exposed core. The explosion was deafening as the war machine's circuits overloaded and its systems shut down in a burst of sparks and fire. With the machine disabled, Captain Ward and her team pushed forward toward the Emperor, his face twisted in rage as he realized that his final defense had been shattered. He reached for a weapon hidden beneath his throne, but before he could fire a single shot, the human soldiers were upon him. They moved with precision, capturing him in a coordinated strike, forcing him to surrender. His once proud empire now lay in ruins, and the war was finally over. Outside, the final waves of Tarkoth ships fell before the human fleet, and the battle for Earth was won. The Emperor's surrender marked the turning point humanity had fought for, but it was not the end of the war. It was the end of an era. The last remnants of the Tarkoth Empire scattered to the farthest reaches of space. Their once proud fleets now broken and leaderless, the galaxy watched as the humans stood victorious. But the victory felt hollow for many. The cost of the war had been immense, and while the Emperor was captured, there were still those among the Sarkoth who would fight to the bitter end. Humanity's leaders met in the wake of the battle to discuss the future. They had proven that they were capable of defeating the invaders, but now they had to ensure that Earth remained secure and that the Sarkoth would never rise again. The Sithra had proved to be valuable allies, but their motivations were unclear, and there was growing concern that the Sithra might have their own plans for domination now that the human race had shown its strength. The delicate balance of power in the galaxy was shifting. Diplomats from Earth and the Sithra gathered to begin discussions on how to rebuild the galaxy after the fall of the Tarkov Empire. The negotiations were tense. The Sithra had their own interests, and they were not willing to let humanity take center stage in the future of galactic politics. But humans were not about to be pushed aside. They had fought too hard to claim their place in the galaxy, and they were not about to relinquish it to anyone else. As the negotiations unfolded, humanity's military leaders prepared for a different kind of battle, a battle to preserve their hard-won peace and ensure that no one would threaten Earth again. The remnants of the Tarkov Empire were still out there hiding in the shadows, and there were whispers of other factions preparing to rise up and claim the power left behind by the Emperor's fall. Captain Lena Ward stood among the human leaders as they discussed their next move. Her thoughts were on the soldiers who had fought and died to bring them this far, the sacrifices they had made to ensure that Earth would survive the invasion, and she knew that the work was far from over. The war had ended, but the rebuilding had just begun. The human fleet remained on high alert, ready to respond to any threat that might arise. Their ships now patrolling the edges of Earth's atmosphere, ensuring that the remnants of the Tarkov forces could never return. And as Earth's leaders worked to rebuild their planet and secure their place in the galaxy, they also prepared to forge new alliances and to lay the groundwork for a new era of peace. In the months that followed, Earth became the heart of a new galactic order. The victory over the Sarkoth had shaken the foundations of power in the galaxy, and humanity had shown that even the most powerful empire could be toppled by sheer will and determination. It was a message that echoed across the stars, the message that no race, no matter how mighty, was beyond defeat. Humanity had entered the galactic stage, not as a fledgling species, but as a force to be reckoned with. They had earned their place in the universe, and as the dust of war settled, they looked to the future with hope. Their victory was more than just the end of an invasion. It was the birth of a new era where humanity would rise to shape the galaxy and show all who would challenge them that they were no longer the underdogs, they were the victors.